Okay, sweetie, have a good first day at school. Mommy's gonna miss you so much.
So where are we going?
I got some errands to run.
Without the kids? That sounds really fun. Good times. Hey, what do you guys want to do tomorrow?
I gotta go to the bank.
I'm down. All right.
See ya.
Later.
Bye.
I can't believe school is back.
I like big buses, I cannot lie. Some other parents may deny, but when a big yellow one comes around the bend and picks up our children, we get sprung. Cause vacation, we didn't get anything done. Cause childcare is expensive, so we're working and we're with them. Oh baby, I'm gonna miss ya, so let me kiss ya. But then go home and try it, just sit there cause
It's so quiet.
Summertime's nice, kayaks and water slides. Then Charles finally learned to swim and Lola read to him. But we were packed in like sardines for hours in this thing. Take the average child and ask them that.
I kind of want to go back.
So fellas,
Yeah!
fellas,
Yeah!
did your mom make a healthy lunch?
Oh, yeah!
Tell her to make it,
Make it!
make it,
Make it!
make that healthy lunch. Baby got class. Baby got class. I like them round and big. Backpacks for my kids, they gotta wait a ton. Cause this shopping list is not fun. We gotta buy this all for two, double up, I ain't talking about this thing, cause the binder has to have 3 rings. They want them real thick and juicy. That pack of pink erasers and all the papers need specific spacers. This says 2 pocket folders. Is that 2 folders or 2 pockets in the folder? And I gotta be straight when I say I'm like, oh, what's a folder with prongs? What the heck is going on? We're definitely getting this wrong. Now for books I wanna hit and quit it, but I gotta stay and pay, and the line is long and it's strong, but I'm down to get the fiction on. So ladies,
Yeah!
ladies,
Yeah!
you wanna roll in my Mercedes?
Yeah.
Well, I don't have one. Can't afford one. And the kids would totally mess it up in one day.
Baby got class. Baby got class.
Meet Annette Winchester, chairperson of the Bonneville School District 93 Board of Directors.
Education has always been probably my greatest love and my greatest interest. My favorite time of year is September. I love to see school buses come down the road. If you want to be happy, go in an elementary school. That's a positive, warm environment.
Winchester is the driving force behind the district's E-Center. About 5 years ago, she pushed the district to start the program in order to ward off many high school students that either flunked out or dropped out.
People become discouraged. Students don't have the support at home for various reasons, and they don't value or understand what an education will do for them.
The E-Center serves two purposes: to get students that flunk a class a chance to get back on track, and to give students that drop out of school an opportunity to graduate.
The E-Center, we could catch the kids who maybe just had 1 or 2 classes that kept them from graduating. Instead of having to be overwhelmed, this is an opportunity for them to step in and get it done. The world is changing today. It isn't just coming to school and sitting in a class. That doesn't meet the needs of all of our students. They're doing great things for themselves and their families. We need to be able to offer it to every student.
That's why Annette Winchester is one of many Idaho education champions. Join us for American Graduate Day on September 27th.
There's a statistic that over 90% of people go home at the end of the day feeling unfulfilled by their work. This is the difference between liking your job and loving your job. You can like your job, but do you love your job? And over 90% of the people who work these days don't. And I imagine a world in which that statistic is completely reversed, in which the vast majority of people go home at the end of the day feeling fulfilled by the work that they do, feeling that they've contributed to something bigger than themselves.
He says the problem with teachers is, what's a kid going to learn from someone who decided that his best option in life was to become a teacher? I'm sorry. He reminds the other dinner guests that it's true what they say about teachers: those who can, do, and those who can't, teach. I'm sorry. I decide to bite my tongue instead of his, and resist the urge to remind the other dinner guests that it's also true what they say about lawyers, because we're eating after all, and this is supposed to be polite conversation. I mean, you're a teacher, Taylor. Come on, be honest. What do you make? And I wish he hadn't done that. Asked me to be honest. Because you see, I've got this little policy in my classroom about honesty and butt kicking, which is, if you ask for it, then I have to let you have it. You want to know what I make? I make kids work harder than they ever thought they could. I can make a C+ feel like a Congressional Medal of Honor, and I can make an A- feel like a slap in the face. How dare you waste my time with anything less than your very best? I make kids sit through 40 minutes of study hall in absolute. No, you may not work in groups. No, you cannot ask me a question, so put your hand down. Why won't I let you go to the bathroom? Because you're bored, and you don't really have to go to the bathroom, do you? I make parents tremble in fear when I call home at around dinner time. Hi, this is Mr. Molly. Hope I haven't called at a bad time. I just wanted to talk to you about something that your son said today in class. To the biggest bully in the grade, he said, "Hey, why don't you leave that kid alone?" I still cry sometimes, don't you? And that was the noblest act of courage that I have ever seen. I make parents see their children for who they are and who they can be. You want to know what I make? I make kids wonder. I make them question. I make them criticize. I make them apologize and mean it. I make them write, and then I make them read. I make them spell. Definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful, definitely beautiful. Define nightly, beautiful, until they will never misspell either one of those words again. I make them show all their work in math class and then hide it on their final drafts in English. I make them realize that if you've got this, then you follow this. And if somebody ever tries to judge you based on what you make, you give them this. Here, let me break it down for you so you know what I say is true. Teachers make a difference. Now, what about you?
Probably the most important thing for kids growing up today is the love of embracing change. I mean, the catch for preparing students for the 21st century workforce is how do you get kids that have curiosity and a questioning disposition? We've called it in the past the gaming disposition. Is that if you look at the disposition of hardcore gamers, such as World of Warcraft, massive multiplayer games, the surprising things you find, contrary to what people think, is these kids, first of all, are incredibly bottom line oriented. They want to be measured because they want to see how much they're improving. And in fact, the most common mantra of a real gamer is if I ain't learning, it ain't fun.
I don't think any kid is born digitally native. I think kids are born consuming media, but I don't think kids are born producing media. So almost any kid that you look at and you say, oh wow, this is a great user of digital media, you can trace back. There's a parent, there's a program, there's something that inspired them and developed them.
Part of the opportunity here is learning the content, which is very much the 20th century idea around education. But in the 21st century, it's learning the tools and the skills of remaking that content and becoming the creator and the producer.
We know that the learning outside of school matters tremendously for the learning in school. So a lot of what we're trying to say about kids in formal learning with new media is part of an already existing set of understandings that educators have of the importance of the home environment, for the peer environment, for the community, for learning that happens in schools. The question is, how can we be more active about linking those two together?
We just assumed when we opened the school that digital media would be available at all moments. And we have a technology philosophy around bring it out when we need it and put it away when we don't need it. We have a wireless building, the kids use laptops, and the reason we do that is so that we can put them away when it's actually not the best tool for them to be learning with.
We find when we talk about 21st century skills, people often reduce them to skills for the workplace and skills involving technology, and we really are thinking about skills for creativity, for civic engagement, for social life, the full range of experiences that young people will be involved in the future.
I think for teachers and schools and classroom learning, there's still an incredibly important role to play, which is about giving kids access across the board to a baseline set of standards, literacies, expectations about what they need to participate in contemporary society, to be reflective, and to also take opportunity of the fact that you really have kids and adults in a shared space that's safe, that's sanctioned, that gives kids an opportunity to reflect on things in their everyday life that's not just about them being immersed in it all the time. So I think that there are incredibly important functions for schools. What we're saying by valuing informal learning is not that we should abandon formal learning, but that we should get those working together in a much more coordinated way.
what do you think the future will be like? That seems like a childish question immediately after its proposition, but I want you to seriously think about it for a second. What new exciting technologies wait for us just around the corner? What if I told you some of what you thought could only be science fiction existed today? And yes, that thing on the right is an experimental robot. Okay, so we all know that there's technology like Google Glass, which everybody knows about. But what about some of the others? Today, we'll be taking a look at the top 5 technologies that may show a sign of things to come. Let's kick it off with a brand new way of interacting with your computer by Leap Technology. You may remember some scenes from the 2002 film Minority Report, where Tom Cruise performs gestures in the air to navigate around a computer interface. Well, at the end of 2013, this technology arrived in an affordable package, and they're calling it Leap Motion. So what's Leap Motion all about? Let's hear a bit from the manufacturers themselves.
I'm David Holes, I'm the CTO at Leap Motion. We're making next generation 3D motion sensing device. At some point, it's no longer gestures. It's like you have this object and it's in your hands and you're able to manipulate it in very subtle ways. That's sort of very intuitive in the back of your mind instead of something that you're thinking about, like, okay, what drop down menu do I do? How do I engage rotate mode? Okay, let me pivot here and do this thing, and it ends up becoming it's really interesting.
You would think technology like this would cost an arm and a leg, but it's actually available in store for $79.99. That's crazy. It's been a growing trend over the last few years, the trend of 3D printing. The technology behind 3D printing has existed for many years, but that being said, it's only been made available to the public this decade. To explain it simply, 3D printing is a process of making a three-dimensional object of virtually any shape from a digital model.
So you can import a model and it can detect where there are overhangs and generate smart support structures that go up to it. So then when you print it off, the thing comes off on this little pin bed, it kind of looks like, and then you can just snap it off and it feels like you're peeling it off of a piece of Velcro.
3D printing is achieved using an additive process, where successive layers of material are laid down in different shapes. 3D printing can create objects that would be too expensive or impossible to create using conventional methods. Basically, if you can create a model on your computer, you can print it. The applications are almost endless, and this very well may be the next big industry in the 2020s. Before we rush on to number 1, I just want you to take a look at a few 3D printed objects from 3D printers that you can buy right now.
What is more important than exciting young minds, making kids want to be smarter? Deborah Roberts tells us about an expert who thinks he cracked the code of what makes a great teacher. And tonight, some of those teachers show us what a day with them can be.
Boys and girls, the secret is that this is not an ordinary classroom.
If this seems more secret clubhouse than third grade reading class, you just made teacher Justin Melly's day.
What's the smart student attitude?
Work hard, get smart.
Excitement's part of the lesson in his Houston classroom.
Legendary.
Legendary. The same is true in Mariel Elguero's fifth grade class in Newark, New Jersey.
Sometimes my little sister likes to imitate me.
Today, the kids are grasping the word imitate. With their creative teaching styles, both Elguero and Melly have seen their students leap 2, even 3 grade levels in a single year.
These teachers, every time we see these great results, they're setting ambitious goals based on high expectations for their students.
Okay, who can tell me what rhyme is?
Stephen Farr, who recruits and trains top-notch college grads for Teach for America, spent 10 years visiting classrooms all over the country, trying to unravel the mystery of what makes a great teacher.
Can you tell me examples of how she makes it fun?
What he found, and is now sharing in a new book, is that superstar teachers need not have outgoing personalities or master's degrees or loads of teaching experience, but they do share a few things in common.
You guys still need tons of help figuring out words that you get stuck on. If you agree, you can show me with your thumb.
Great teachers make certain every student's keeping up.
One of the things that I do here are a lot of checks for understanding that are super visual. Show me with your thumbs. You can see who's really getting it and who isn't. Today we're going to figure out a bunch of ways, some new ways to figure out words that we don't know.
Amazing teachers aren't afraid to change their lesson plans.
If I'm teaching something and it's just not flying, then I say to them, my mistake. This isn't working. Let's regroup. Let's try something else.
So you do that in front of the kids?
Well, they're fine with that. They're used to that.
But this may be the most important discovery of all.
We are all going to get so much smarter.
Great teachers set high goals, as 11-year-old Brianna Randolph has learned from Miss Elguero. Brianna, what was your reading level when you got here?
It was hard for me to read because I didn't understand the chapter books.
Her mom, Denise, is now amazed at the difference.
When she got here, we learned that Brianna was 2 levels behind. And today, Brianna is actually almost 2.5 levels above what she was when she came in.
And it's only February.
And so we choose Justin Melly and Marielle Elguero on behalf of all the great teachers who made us believe in ourselves and think of learning as absolute joy.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the only home we've ever known, the pale blue dot.
These are roughly 28,835 jelly beans. I counted out 500 of them and used those to weigh the rest. In this pile, there's one jelly bean for each day that the average American will live. You might have more beans in your life, or maybe less, but on average, this is the time we have. Here's a single bean. It's your very first day. A special day, but kind of a rough day on everyone involved. Add 364 more and you have the first year of your life. Now, for a sense of scale, here are your first 15 years, 5,475 days, which brings us to the threshold of adulthood, and at that moment, this is the time that we have left. And this is, on average, what we will do with all that time. We will be asleep for a total of 8,477 days. If we're lucky, some of that time we'll be sleeping next to someone we love. We will be in the process of eating, drinking, or preparing food for 1,635 days. We'll be at work, hopefully doing something satisfying, for the equivalent of 3,202 of those days. 1,099 days will be spent commuting or traveling from one place to another, maybe a little bit more if you live in LA. On average, we will watch television in one form or another for a total of 2,676 days. Household activities, like chores and tending to our pets and shopping, will take another 1,576 days. And we will care for the needs and well-being of others, our friends and family, for 564 days. We'll spend 671 days bathing, grooming, and doing all other bathroom-related activities, and another 720 days will go to community activities, like religious and civic duties, charities, and taking classes. After we remove all those beans, this is what remains. This is the time that we have left. Time for laughing, swimming, making art, going on hikes, text messages, reading, checking Facebook, playing softball, maybe even teaching yourself how to play the guitar. So what are you going to do with this time? How much of it do you think you've already used up? If you only had half of it, what would you do differently? What about half of that? How much time have you already spent worrying instead of doing something that you love? What if you just had one more day? What are you going to do today?
My goodness, don't you remember when you went first to school? You went to kindergarten. And in kindergarten, the idea was to push along so that you could get into first grade, and then push along so that you could get into second grade, third grade, and so on, going up and up. And then you went to high school, and this was a great transition in life. And now the pressure is being put on. You must get ahead. You must go up the grades and finally be good enough to get to college. And then when you get to college, you're still going step by step, up to the great moment in which you're ready to go out into the world. And then when you get out into this famous world comes the struggle for success in profession or business. And again, there seems to be a ladder before you, something for which you're reaching all the time. And then, suddenly, when you're about 40 or 45 years old in the middle of life, you wake up one day and say, huh? I've arrived. And by Jove, I feel pretty much the same as I've always felt. In fact, I'm not so sure that I don't feel a little bit cheated. Because you see, you were fooled. You were always living for somewhere where you aren't. And while, as I said, it is of tremendous use for us to be able to look ahead in this way and to plan, there is no use planning for a future, which when you get to it and it becomes a present, you won't be there. You'll be living in some other future which hasn't yet arrived. And so in this way, one is never able actually to inherit and enjoy the fruits of one's action. You can't live at all unless you can live fully now.
I have spent my entire life either at the schoolhouse, on the way to the schoolhouse, or talking about what happens in the schoolhouse. Both my parents were educators. My maternal grandparents were educators. And for the past 40 years, I've done the same thing. And so needless to say, over those years, I've had a chance to look at education reform from a lot of perspectives. Some of those reforms have been good, some of them have been not so good. And we know why kids drop out. We know why kids don't learn. It's either poverty, low attendance, negative peer influences. We know why. But one of the things that we never discuss, or we rarely discuss, is the value and importance of human connection. Relationships. James Comer says that no significant learning can occur without a significant relationship. George Washington Carver says all learning is understanding relationships. Everyone in this room has been affected by a teacher or an adult. For years, I have watched people teach. I have looked at the best and I've looked at some of the worst. A colleague said to me one time, they don't pay me to like the kids. They pay me to teach a lesson. The kids should learn it. I should teach it. They should learn it. Case closed. Well, I said to her, you know, kids don't learn from people they don't like. She said, that's just a bunch of hooey. And I said to her, well, your year is going to be long and arduous, dear. Needless to say, it was. Some people think that you can either have it in you to build a relationship or you don't. I think Stephen Covey had the right idea. He said you ought to just throw in a few simple things, like seeking first to understand as opposed to being understood. Simple things like apologizing. You ever thought about that? Tell a kid you're sorry, they're in shock. I taught a lesson once on ratios. I'm not real good with math, but I was working on it. And I got back and looked at that teacher edition. I taught the whole lesson wrong. So I came back to class the next day and I said, look, guys, I need to apologize. I taught the whole lesson wrong. I'm so sorry. They said, that's okay, Miss Pearson. You were so excited. We just let you go. I have had classes that were so low, so academically deficient that I cried. I wondered, how am I going to take this group in 9 months from where they are to where they need to be? And it was difficult. It was awfully hard. How do I raise the self-esteem of a child and his academic achievement at the same time? One year I came up with a bright idea. I told all my students, you were chosen to be in my class because I am the best teacher and you are the best students. They put us all together so we could show everybody else how to do it. One of the students said, really? I said, really? We have to show the other classes how to do it. So when we walk down the hall, people will notice us. So you can't make noise. You just have to strut. And I gave him a saying to say, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came. I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here. I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. And they said, yeah. You say it long enough, it starts to be a part of you. And so I gave a quiz 20 questions. Student missed 18. I put a +2 on this paper and a big smiley face. He said, Miss Pearson, is this an F? I said, yes. He said, then why'd you put a smiley face? I said, because you on the roll. You got 2 right, you didn't miss them all. I said, and when we review this, won't you do better? He said, yes, ma'am, I can do better. You see, -18 sucks all the life out of you. +2 said, I ain't all bad. For years, I watched my mother take the time at recess to review, go on home visits in the afternoon, buy combs and brushes and peanut butter and crackers to put in her desk drawer for kids that needed to eat, and a washcloth and some soap for the kids who didn't smell so good. See, it's hard to teach kids who stink. And kids can be cruel. And so she kept those things in her desk, and years later, after she retired, I watched some of those same kids come through and say to her, you know, Miss Walker, you made a difference in my life. You made it work for me. You made me feel like I was somebody when I knew at the bottom I wasn't. And I want you to just see what I've become. And when my mama died 2 years ago at 92, there were so many former students at her funeral. It brought tears to my eyes, not because she was gone, but because she left a legacy of relationships that could never disappear. Can we stand to have more relationships? Absolutely. Will you like all your children? Of course not. And you know your toughest kids are never absent. Never. You won't like them all, and the tough ones show up for a reason. It's the connection, it's the relationships. And while you won't like them all, the key is they can never, ever know it. So teachers become great actors and great actresses, and we come to work when we don't feel like it, and we listen to policy that doesn't make sense, and we teach anyway. We teach anyway because that's what we do. Teaching and learning should bring joy. How powerful would our world be if we had kids who were not afraid to take risks, who were not afraid to think, and who had a champion? Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Is this job tough? You betcha. Oh, God, you betcha. But it is not impossible. We can do this. We're educators. We're born to make a difference. Thank you so much.